Every family has a member who marries in from the outside and, over time, becomes not just a spouse but a stabilizing force. A quiet voice that shapes the family in ways the family itself might not fully understand. For the Roloff family in 2026, that person is Isabelle Roloff. Born Isabel Sofia Rock, raised in Portland, Oregon, married to the youngest Roloff son, Jacob, living on Roloff Farms, caring for the animals, raising her son Mateo, writing poetry, building a Substack, painting art, speaking her mind, sometimes at odds with the rest of the family, being credited by fans in December of 2025 as one of the primary reasons the fractured Roloff family finally found its way back together for a Christmas reunion. Isabelle is not a Roloff by birth. She is a Roloff by choice. She married in, she stayed, she built her life on the property her husband had grown up on. She has, in ways no one predicted when she and Jacob first started dating, become one of the most quietly influential people in the entire extended Roloff family. Tonight on LPBW Update, we are walking through the full story of Isabel Sofia Rock Roloff, her Portland childhood, the school bus meeting with Jacob that started their long friendship, the frozen pond Christmas Day proposal in Iceland, the rustic farmhouse wedding in 2019, the loss of her mother in 2014 that shaped her writing career, her son Mateo, whose middle name honors her late brother, her Substack, her books, her paintings, her ideological differences from the more conservative Roloff family, and her role in 2026 as the quiet daughter-in-law who has, by every measurable sign, become the person the Roloff family did not know they needed. Let us start with the basics. Isabel Sofia Rock was born on February 19, 1996, in Portland, Oregon. She grew up in Helvetia, Oregon, the same small rural community outside of Portland where Matt and Amy Roloff had bought their farm just a few years earlier. Isabel's childhood home was, according to her own accounts, just a few miles from Roloff Farms. 2 children, both growing up in Helvetia, both riding the same school bus, both attending the same local schools. That is where Isabel and Jacob first met, on the school bus, when they were children, long before either of them had any idea what their future would hold. Isabel has written about this meeting on Instagram. She has said that she and Jacob met on the school bus when they were young, that the houses they grew up in were only a few miles apart, and that this led to a long friendship. That friendship, which spanned their childhood and their adolescence, would eventually become the foundation of their marriage. Isabel's family life in Portland was, in many ways, more complicated than Jacob's on the farm. Her mother, whose name has not been extensively publicized, was the most important person in Isabel's early life. Isabel has written repeatedly about how her mother was her best friend. She has said in her Substack and elsewhere that she and her mother did everything together. Friends would ask Isabel to hang out, and Isabel would almost always rather have hung out with her mother. That kind of intense mother-daughter bond, when it exists, shapes a person for life. And for Isabel, it shaped everything that came next. Her mother had a chronic illness. Isabel knew from a young age that her mother might not live to see her grow up. In one particularly heartbreaking moment that Isabel has written about, she made a promise to her mother through tearful eyes. She told her mother, "Mom, I know you are sick, but you have to grow old enough for me to write my book." And then that promise that if her mother could live long enough for Isabel to write her book, everything would be okay, is one of the most poignant things any daughter has ever written about her mother. Isabel's mother did not live long enough. She died in 2014, when Isabel was 17 or 18 years old. Isabel had barely finished high school. She had not yet written her book. The promise had been made but could not be fulfilled in the way Isabel had hoped. The loss of her mother in 2014 became one of the defining wounds of Isabel's life. It also became, in some ways, the launching pad for her creative career. Isabel started to write. She started to paint. She started to build the artistic life that would eventually give her the platform to fulfill her promise to her mother in different ways, through different creative outlets, at different times in her life. Around the same time, Isabel and Jacob's long-standing friendship blossomed into a romantic relationship. Isabel has said that they started dating when she graduated high school. Jacob was around a year younger than she was, so he was still in high school when their romantic relationship began. But by the time they graduated their teenage years, they were a serious couple. They had been friends for years. They had known each other since childhood. They had grown up geographically close but had different life circumstances. And now, as young adults in their early 20s, they were building a life together. In December of 2017, on Christmas Day, Jacob proposed to Isabel. He did it in Iceland, on a frozen pond, late in the day. That kind of proposal in that kind of setting is the kind of thing that only happens when both people are willing to travel to unusual places, take physical risks, and treat their engagement as an adventure rather than a formal social event. Jacob and Isabel were both adventurous. They loved travel. They loved outdoor experiences. They loved doing things their own way. The Iceland proposal reflected both of them perfectly. Isabel said yes, and their engagement began. On September 7th, 2019, Jacob and Isabel got married in a rustic farmhouse wedding at Roloff Farms. The wedding was small and intimate. Family and close friends were there. Matt and Amy Roloff both attended. Jacob's brothers Zach and Jeremy and his sister Molly were all there. Molly, in fact, had been married 2 years earlier at the same farm, and Isabel had attended Molly's wedding as a friend of the family. Isabel wore a long-sleeve lace gown with a sheer back and a green crown of leaves. She had chosen the green crown to match the outdoor theme of the wedding. Jacob wore a black tuxedo. The couple exchanged emotional vows. Photos from the wedding, some of which were shared on Instagram and some of which were kept private, showed a warm, personal, deeply loving ceremony. Jacob was 22. Isabel was 23. They were young, they were in love, and they were beginning a life together that would include a lot of challenges neither of them fully understood at the time. The first several years of their marriage were spent in Northern California. Isabel has written that she and Jacob moved to Northern California about 7 years ago, so approximately 2018, and that they lived there for a period. They wanted a fresh start. They wanted to build their own identity away from the Roloff family compound. They wanted to figure out who they were as a couple before returning to Oregon. Isabel painted, Jacob wrote. They lived quietly, they traveled. They avoided the reality television world that had shaped Jacob's childhood. Isabel used this period to build her artistic identity. She started building her online presence. She began publishing her writing and her art. She was, in every meaningful way, becoming Isabel Sofia, not just Jacob's wife, not just a supporting character in the extended Roloff family, her own artist, her own writer, her own voice. On December 4th, 2021, Isabel gave birth to their first child, a son. They named him Mateo Tomás Roloff. The first name Mateo is a nod to Jacob's father, Matt. The middle name Tomas honors Isabel's late brother Tomas, who had passed away years earlier. Isabel has been open about how meaningful it was to give her son a name that honored her brother. Tomas lived on, in a symbolic way, through the naming of his nephew. The names, taken together, represented the way Jacob and Isabel wanted to hold both sides of their family together in their son. Roloff and Rock, Matt and Tomas. Two families of origin brought together in one child. Around 2022, Isabel and Jacob made the significant decision to move back to Oregon and take up residence on Roloff Farms itself. Jacob accepted his father Matt's invitation to move back home and work the farm. The timing was significant. Matt's relationship with his other sons was deteriorating over the farm sale conflicts. Jeremy and Audrey had bought their own separate property. Zach and Tori had moved to Washington. Molly and Joel were in Spokane. Jacob and Isabel became the only Roloff family members actually living on Roloff Farms. They started in a fifth-wheel camper. They eventually moved into the main farmhouse, and they have, in the years since, become the caretakers of the property. Jacob grew 60,000 pounds of pumpkins in 2025. Isabel cared for the animals. Together, they built a life on the land that Jacob's father had built. Isabel's creative career has continued throughout this transition. She launched her Substack newsletter, which she called Starting Somewhere, and which she has published under the domain isabelsofia.substack.com. Her Substack posts are thoughtful essays about motherhood, marriage, faith, farm life, the experience of joining a famous family, and the ongoing work of building an artistic life. She writes with the kind of introspection and intentionality that suggests she has been writing seriously for a long time. Her voice is her own. She has published a book of poems called Belonging Somewhere. That book, released in the years after her mother's death, was in some ways the fulfillment of the promise Isabel had made to her mother years earlier. She had written her book. Even though her mother had not lived to see it, Isabel had honored the commitment she had made. The book itself has been well received by readers who value poetry with emotional depth and honest exploration of grief. One of the more interesting aspects of Isabel's presence in the Roloff family is that her personal beliefs and political values differ from those of some of her in-laws. Isabel has attended environmental protection rallies and marches. She has tweeted her support for the Black Lives Matter movement. She is outspoken against sexism. Her broader worldview leans progressive on many issues, in ways that put her at odds with the more conservative Christian orientation of some other Roloff family members. Jeremy and Audrey Roloff, in particular, hold theologically conservative positions on many social and political issues. Isabel does not always agree with them. She has been open about this in her writing. She has not weaponized the disagreements, but she has not hidden them either. She has approached her family relationships with the assumption that people can love each other while disagreeing about important issues. That is a mature approach. It is one of the reasons Isabel has managed to be part of the Roloff family without ever completely conforming to what some might expect a Roloff daughter-in-law to be. She is her own person. She has her own beliefs, and she brings all of that into the family as part of who she is. The most remarkable recent development in Isabel's role in the family has been her emergence as a stabilizing presence during the 2025 healing of the Roloff family conflict. As we discussed in our video on the Christmas 2025 reunion, Isabel was widely credited by fans as one of the primary reasons the reunion happened. She organized, she invited, she made the matching Christmas sweaters happen. She put together the video that captured the moment when Matt, Zach, Jeremy, Jacob, and Chris Merrick all sat together in coordinated outfits for the first time in years. When a commenter on Instagram wrote that Isabel had a lot to do with bringing the family closer together, Isabel simply responded, "Maybe a little. Thank you for noticing." That kind of humble acknowledgement of her role, delivered quietly on Instagram, captures who Isabel has become in the family. She does not seek credit. She does not seek attention. She just does the work. And the work matters. Family reunion work in fractured families is one of the hardest and most important kinds of work anyone can do. Isabel has been doing it quietly for years. In 2025, the results of her work became visible in a way that fans could finally recognize. She had helped bring the Roloffs back together. Looking at Isabel in 2026, she is 30 years old. She is a mother of one, with her son Mateo now 4 years old. She continues to live on Roloff Farms. She continues to write on her Substack. She continues to paint. She continues to care for the animals. She continues to support Jacob in his farming work. She continues to protect Mateo's privacy by keeping his face off social media. She continues to be, by every measure, one of the most thoughtful and grounded members of the Roloff family universe. Her creative career is on an upward trajectory. Her marriage is by every visible measure strong. Her family relationships, complicated by ideological differences in family history, are managed with the kind of grace that only comes from real emotional maturity. What can we learn from Isabel Rock Roloff? A few things. First, that the person who marries into a famous family can become just as important over time as the person born into it. Isabel married Jacob. She became a Roloff by choice. and in the years since, she has become one of the most quietly powerful voices in the extended family. Second, that grief can be a launching pad for creativity. Isabel lost her mother in 2014. She could have let that loss destroy her. Instead, she used it to build her artistic identity. Her writing, her painting, her poetry, all of it draws in some way from the wound of her mother's absence. That is what artists do with their pain. Third, that you can be part of a conservative Christian family without conforming to every belief. Isabel does not hide her progressive views, but she also does not weaponize them. She has figured out how to be part of the Roloff family while still being fully herself. That balance is one of the most important skills anyone can develop in family life. And fourth, that quiet daughters-in-law can be transformative. Isabel is not the loudest voice in the Roloff family. She is not the most public. She is not the most followed. But she has, in her own quiet way, become one of the most important figures in the family's ongoing story. For fans of the Roloff family who have watched the family navigate its many challenges over the past 2 decades, Isabel represents something specific. She represents the next generation of Roloff wives. She represents the possibility that people can join this family through marriage and bring their own gifts and voices with them. She represents the artistic, creative, thoughtful side of the extended Roloff family. And she represents, most importantly, the person who is doing the invisible work of holding the family together in ways that will only be fully appreciated after the fact. So I want to know what you think. What do you think Isabelle Roloff brings to the family that Jacob might not have found anywhere else? Do you love the frozen pond Iceland proposal on Christmas Day as much as I do? And do you think Isabel deserves more credit for her role in the family healing than she has been getting? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and I love hearing from you. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe to LPBW Update, and ring the bell so you do not miss our weekly Roloff family stories. We are committed to bringing you the truth, the timeline, and the heart of every member of this remarkable family. I will see you on the next one.